Hey guys, this is CakeDive. I'm just doing a quick little message before this episode starts to let y'all know that this is a completely unedited episode of Cake Radio by CakeDive. I don't have the time to edit this down. I'm so sorry. I'm just gonna be real. Y'all know I keep it real with y'all. I just don't have the time to edit this down. And usually I would edit this down to get rid of the likes, the and make sure that this is a digestible time for y'all. But we at the start of the year, and the editing software that I usually use has been kind of being wonky and cutting things that I didn't want to be cut or leaving things in that I didn't want to be leaving in. So I didn't want to deal with that. And it's already Thursday when I was recording this episode. So I'm just going to give y'all the episode. Thank you guys so much for supporting me throughout 2023. I hope you guys continue to support me, this podcast, and everything else that I put out in 2024. And I love y'all so much. And let's get into the episode. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to Cake Radio by CakeDive. Whether you're watching this on the ZCN Ticket YouTube channel or whether you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, I hope you're doing well and I hope you continue supporting the podcast and supporting the content that I put out. I'm so happy that you guys supported me so much during 2023, especially with the ZCN Ticket channel, which saw the highest amount of viewership in this channel's history. Also really excited to bring this podcast back. I'm so glad you guys have been enjoying it, and I hope you guys continue to support. Now, are y'all ready for this slice of cake? Because if so, we about to talk about my top 10 movies of 2023. 2023 was a pretty good year overall for movies, all things considered. I mean, we did have to go through a strike, and a bunch of things did have to be delayed until 2024 and 2025. Um, but all in all, this was a fairly good year, and we could just get into the top 10s. So for number 10, I'm giving it to A Haunting in Venice. I gave that 4.5 out of 5 stars. And this was a movie that I really enjoyed. If you don't know what A Haunting in Venice is, it follows Hercule Poirot. It is, following the same Kenneth Brand. I think it's Kenneth Branagh. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Just what with me here. It follows Kenneth's take on Hercule Poirot. This is the third film in which he's done involving Hercule Poirot. There was A Murder on the Orient Express, there was Death on the Nile, and now there's A Haunting in Venice. And it follows Poirot, who's retired, living in sort of a retirement who's living in retirement in Venice, and he meets one of his so-called friends who is an author and kind of made him famous, and helped her career out. Arrives in Venice to hang out with him and pretty much begs him to attend a seance on Halloween at a very old palazzo. When one of the guests, who is the person hosting the seance, spoilers, is murdered, Poirot has to return to detecting and starts investigating the situation and unveiling a lot of secrets. This was 4.5 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed this. I have been kind of on and off about whether I was going to give this 5 stars. I might rewatch and see if I'll give it that, but this is probably one of my favorite films out of the 3 films that we got from Kenneth's take on Poirot. I really like this one. I think this is probably the best one that he has done yet, and might be the best one ever, considering that I'm not sure if we'll even get a sequel, because Murder on the Orient Express, which was originally my main favorite, now that's my second favorite out of the 3, came out and did really well. It did very strong numbers. Then they did Death in the Nile, and that was delayed because of the pandemic. 20th Century Studios, when it got acquired by Disney, decided to just jump that out, and that one didn't do very much numbers. This one came out, and they were kind of trying to get a younger audience in it by making it kind of I think they're trying to hide the fact that it wasn't like a Perot film, unless like you are aware who Perot is. You're like you kind of know the ins and outs of how these films look. But I think they're trying to lure younger audiences in by making sure that this people were aware this was like more of a horror thriller based take. Um, and it still didn't do very much numbers. I think this might have been one of the lowest performing films of the franchise, maybe. But it's unfortunate, but it happens when you have a more older skewing film like this in a market where, the older people aren't really tuning in as much as they used to in the past, and there isn't too many younger faces in this film to really court that audience for real. But all in all, that being said, I really think this is the strongest entry yet because of the fact that it felt like it was its own like take of this adaptation of one of the books. And it was an unfamiliar book. I never read it. I think the only book out of the three films that we got that I read was Murder on the Orient Express. Um, I liked how it kind of went back to Hunting Venice kind of went back to what I really enjoyed about Murder on the Orient Express, where it felt like it was its own take of Poirot and of the book. There were like they felt like the creative liberties that I did take felt fairly like justifiable, and the cast was very strong and very well executed. Death of the Nile didn't have that because they decided to put Gal Gadot, who I will swear up and down cannot act, in the forefront. And it was also one of the last films with like a bunch of other people who are like cancelable. Like there's Russell Brand is in it for whatever reason. Army Hammer went out sad because his performance sucked in it, and he like was hit with those very interesting allegations, um, and disappeared off the face of the earth. But Haunting in Venice returned to form. There was a lot of there was very strong performances here, um, and Kenneth, Tina Fey, Jude Hill, like Jamie Dornan, and Michelle Yeoh, like really like stole the show, like took the attention when you saw them on screen because they had such a like weight to them when they like started acting. Um, and I really appreciate it. And the other thing is, I feel like this, in terms of direction, this felt like it felt very distinct. It felt very on its own. It didn't feel like um, Murder on the Orient Express, and it didn't feel like Death on the Nile because Murder on the Orient Express kind of felt like it was its own thing in terms of direction. Death on the Nile felt like any other movie that existed, but this take specifically kind of felt like it. They did a lot of interesting things to really lean into that thriller, horror, murder mystery aspect because it was just really well done, and I would rewatch it. I would even buy like a physical copy of this and own it. That's how good it is. Number 9 goes to Barbie. Barbie originally was like up in the top 10 list, but as we continue through the year, a lot more stronger films came out, and with thought I had to give it number 9. It's a strong film. It's a funny film. The performances in it were really good. I really especially liked America Ferrera and Issa Rae's performance in it. I'm a huge Issa Rae fan down, as you know. I did make Icons Issa Rae, so check that out if you haven't. Um, but and it definitely was a cultural phenomenon for sure. I can't argue against that. But um I think that there's just stronger films out there this year. Not to say that this was like me giving it a 9 is a bad thing. I think it's still deserving of a strong score, and it's still like one of the best movies of 2023. I just think that there's a lot stronger out there. And I don't really have many, criticisms of the film. I know a lot of people are like, oh, like the Kens were there too much. Like I like the Kens being in there. The Barbies did pretty good. The message was pretty good overall. Um, but I think my only criticism was that I'm just Ken Song. People gonna like try to attack me when I talk about I'm Just Ken, but the song's not all that. Like it went on for too long. It could have been a cute little ditty, but it just went on for a little too long and overstayed its welcome. Like, and the fact that we trying to act like it should push for these like awards, like I think not. It's given Peaches, and Peaches also didn't get no nomination. I think we need to be a little bit serious a little bit. I think there's other songs that are a little bit more deserving, which I'll actually talk about later on with this list. Number 8 goes to Killers of the Flower Moon. I gave this a 4.5 as well, and I really enjoyed this one. As I think with the length, it did feel a little bit long, but well, okay, I take that back. Killers of the Flower, like it was long in terms of runtime, but it didn't feel long. I think that my criticism mostly came from the fact that I feel like um near the end there was a little bit too much air in terms of like nothing really going on, and I think that was mostly because like I think Martin Scorsese was really trying to kind of make you like sit and think and be in sort of like take everything in as we kind of wrap near the end of the story, as we wrap with the court case, as we kind of wrap with and dealt with the consequences of everything. But I still think that's still a really strong film. The performances in it were really phenomenal. Lily Gladstone really stole, the attention when you like saw her on screen. She did a really phenomenal job, and I hope that she continues to get booked for future films because she really did her big one with this role. Um, and that's all I really have to say on it. Like, it's a strong movie. I think that if you haven't seen it, go ahead and see it. Like, it's worth your time. Um, Number 7 goes to Oppenheimer, and I would say, like, honestly, I feel like I wouldn't mind switching Killers of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer. Like, I feel like they're kind of tied. I think that they're both strong movies. I think they both were really well directed. They're both really long movies as well. They both kind of push that 3 hour runtime. Um, I think with Oppenheimer, I think it still is a strong movie, and I think the reason I kind of see Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon being tied is I think that both films kind of had one thing done better than the other. I think with Oppenheimer there was a lot stronger visual appeal with what it was doing um from start to finish, whereas Killers of the Flower Moon felt a lot more like dull. Obviously you can't make, you know, the 1920s like Osage um murders like look beautiful and desirable or anything, because that's not what that was. Um, but I think that Oppenheimer still looked very gorgeous for like what's the situations that it was covering was. And I think that my criticism with Oppenheimer was one, um the runtime. I think this was the biggest time. Like, unlike Killers of the Final Room, with Killers of the Final Room, I didn't feel the runtime as much as I did with Oppenheimer. So that's why I also gave Oppenheimer like a 4.5, because um I think that there was still some air located in the plot. It could have been a lot tighter. And I think that it was just kind of the runtime. Like, there was a point in the movie in which I was kind of like, oh, okay, we're wrapping up, and I checked my watch. And I was doing Barbenheimer, so I was also checking to see if like we were wrapping up, and I was like, oh no, we have like another hour of this. So I think it definitely could have been shorter, but I think that with the final product, it still did a very strong job with what it was. Number 6 goes to Renaissance, a film by Beyonce. Now, it's kind of rough because I was talking in the last episode about should Beyonce talk about Israel and Palestine, the genocide that's going on there. But I think in terms of like the film and its standalone context as to what it is, I think overall it was still a really strong film. I think some people are gonna look at me crazy because I was gonna have this in my top 10, and people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have a concert film in your like people, you should have your concert film high up in the school and high up in your like top 10 or anything. Da 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 da. I think that when it is technically one, it's like half a concert film into a documentary. I think some people are like, oh, like if it has to be both, then it's not a good film. No, walk with me. I think that it being a documentary and a concert film is very strong, and it's also not like it's not atypical because that has happened before with like concert films and documentaries. I think that what Beyonce did here with the sort of really kind of like interlacing and like mixing the documentary and narration portions of the film, showing how like anything could go wrong within a minute, and hearing her thoughts as like different how different things pertain to these different set pieces and these different production processes, and then seeing the performance in its final execution was definitely something that is really well done here. And as I talked about in that Renaissance video, which I definitely recommend you should check out, I did talk a lot about how I enjoyed the I did enjoy the documentary portion a lot. And I also really appreciated the discussions of like family. I was getting sort of that really sort of open previews to like how Beyonce's family operates, how her like thought processes and stuff like that. It still is, you know, as Beyonce as ever, as like clean cut and as like perfect as it feels, but she does still try to be like, well, I am imperfect. Like, as much as a celebrity I am, like I still make mistakes and stuff like that. So there's some heart in it. I did have some like critiques that I talked about, like them kind of skipping over, you know, Uncle Johnny dying from, you know, the AIDS epidemic, the AIDS crisis, you know, and us not really getting too much of like not as much of like just still the lack of like LGBTQ like artists being on stage doing sort of openings and stuff like that, which is sort of an issue that was seen with the tour in general. Um, but with that all considered, the film was still pretty good. I also really like seeing Megan Thee Stallion on stage. Like like overall, it was still a good film. Six place, 4.5 stars. Number five is when we get to the 5 stars. That's when we start getting to the 5 star films. And number five goes to Godzilla minus one. I saw Godzilla minus one in 40X because it was at the request of one of my friends. I was talking to him and he was like, oh, like I wish I saw this in 40X because I am very curious to see how that experience was like. And I'm like, well, let me do this for you. And when I tell you that 40X experience was like out of this world, like you felt God when Godzilla arrived, like you felt the footsteps. Like it was really strong. But outside of that, in terms of the film itself, Warner Brothers legendary, the American team that is making these Godzilla films, girl, wrap it up. You have until April 1st, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. to wrap these films up. I don't know how you're gonna do it. You might need to move the movie that you announcing up, cut it. Write it off like y'all you did the other movies. Like y'all don't need to do no more Godzilla movies in like the American tongue. We're good because this was really phenomenal. I really enjoyed how this film really took a lot of heart and had a lot of strong messaging about, you know, the devastation and the pain that war can cause. I like that it took place during World War II, and I liked how it showed the devastation that took place as a result of World War II in Japan, and how PTSD and how, you know, feelings that you are obligated to serve your country exist for, you know, countries like this and for certain people, and how that can lead to devastating effects to their family, to those who love them, to those who like still respect them as people, regardless of whether they served and did their duties or whether they didn't, and how you can still serve your country in ways that doesn't put your life at stake or doesn't put your life at peril. I think that was really well done. It was really well executed. But outside of that, like Godzilla, like slayed. Like I enjoyed seeing, you know, the destruction stuff that was caused by Godzilla. Um, it was just really well executed. 5 stars, fifth place in the list for the best films. Number 4 goes to Poor Things. Poor Things also is a 5. I'm gonna just stop dropping, the 5-star ratings because at this point it's still 5 out of 5. Poor Things um was really I really want to rewatch it because it was so gorgeous. First of all, it was very well, like very, very colorful, very well sort of coordinated and well colored. Like the costume design was really beautiful. There was a lot of like um small like pieces and things that were like really like there's a lot of attention that was given to this project that I really respect and I really appreciated. And outside of that, like the film was really absolutely absurd. Like we love a little vigorous jumping. Like I can't say too much about that, but like the film is just really, beautiful. I think as absurd as it is, it really is nice to see how it talks about, the journey of like womanhood, the journey of becoming like human, essentially, the journey of like finding your place in the world. Like I think that again, as absurd as it was, it still had a lot of points that were made and it was made very beautifully. Like I have no complaints on it. um Number 3, and this was like a last add to this top place too. Um and I rewatched this. Like I rewatched this the same weekend it came out, and like it really held its own. And that goes to The Color Purple, the new version of The Color Purple. Now I hate to say the new version because it's not even. There's a lot of people who are kind of shocked and unaware that this is not a remake or like a requel to the original film The Color Purple that came out, a while back. This is an adaptation of the musical, and even then it's its own take of the musical. And I think that when I first watched it, I gave it 4.5 stars. And I had I think the biggest issue that was holding me back was when I actually did see the original like film of The Color Purple, and I think my biggest complaints was that I felt like the film was fair, like it was like 2.5 hours, but I felt like there wasn't enough time covering certain plot points that we missed over that was in the original and was also in the book and stuff like that. Like we really don't get to see Squeak as much, and in this new version of the film, she kind of appears. She's played by her, and her looks absolutely stunning, but like her role as Squeak feels a lot more like small and reduced compared to what you would see in the other film or what you would see in the book or what you probably would see in the musical as well. I think that there is just a I think there was, stuff that was just kind of glossed over, I think probably for time, that could have still been here. But I think overall the film was really beautiful. It was really strong. I really enjoyed the direction. The cast was absolutely stacked. I think that I really didn't have any. The only complaint that I had, I think the only complaint that I had for any of the cast members was Sierra, and it was just like me if I had to really nitpick at it, and it's purely because of the fact that like her voice is just a little flat, just tonally, and like that's really it. Like I can't even like drag her for that because like overall she still did a good performance in the film. Like everyone did a really great job. Everyone deserves Oscars for this, or everyone deserves to like go down in history for this and get like a huge bag. It's a shame that it's a shame that Taraji Taraji P. Henson had to like hop on her like the press tour for this and say like, hey, like I'm not being paid fairly. Like it seems to be a reoccurring thing with what I was talking about in this podcast about the strikes earlier on, about how it just seemed like nobody be like outside of the executives, like the higher up people, like nobody being paid enough. Like that's this really unfortunate, and it is a shame that the black talent in Hollywood, and not just the black talent but the people of color in Hollywood, have like consistently said this and consistently are like not being booked as much as their white counterparts, even though there has been proof, and even like just women in general, like they are not being booked compared to their like male counterparts either. And even though we're like breaking records and we're like changing the turnout and stuff like this. Like Color Purple broke records as being one of the biggest Christmas Day openings since like 2009. Um, and the actors and actresses in this film are still not being paid enough. Like it's insane. But this film was really enjoyable. I loved the performances. I loved the music. I've been like going back and re-listening to the songs from this film. That's how good it is. And I rarely do that for musicals. I just really enjoyed it, and I might rewatch it again. Like it's kind of like it's really good. Like this, I would rewatch like every film that is in the top 10, but I would especially rewatch The Color Purple. Like it was really strong and really well done. Number two goes to Bottoms. Bottoms was really strong. I really enjoyed the film. It was just absolutely like hilarious and absurd. Um, Bottoms is I didn't even talk about the plots for the other ones, but like because Poor Things is very absurd. You know, Color Purple. I can't like. I've already the film follows the same sort of traditional plot as the other versions of Color Purple. Like the original film has been out for so long that if you don't know what the Color Purple is about, you need to hop on it and just tune into one of these films or musicals or books. But Bottoms follows the two lesbians who start a fight club to end up dating and impressing the two girls that they have crushes on. And I think that it was so absurd, but it was really well executed. It was flat out hilarious. I saw this twice and I was just like floored. The first time I saw it, my experience was a little bit tempered because I actually was in a theater and I saw a mouse in the auditorium, and literally like I was like chilling in the seat during previews, and I like look down because the lights are up, and I see like something move, and I'm like, oh, that's probably like someone like moving from below like the seats or something. But no, I literally see like a mouse, like a big ass mouse. It was probably I'm saying it's a mouse, but it's probably a rat. I don't know. Like girls make me freak out just as I talk about this, but I saw it like drop down from the seat, like four or five seats next to like near me. I saw it drop down and like stop and look at me, and then like turn and then fall next like below to like the next row of seats. And I was like, oh hell. And like I like went to the managers and stuff like that during the previews because I'm like, oh, like there's a mouse in this auditorium. And they were like, oh, like we already know about that. We've already contacted like animal control. We're setting traps like tomorrow, and like don't worry about it. I'm like, what? Okay. I still sat my ass down and watched that movie, so I can't say too much on that. But I ain't had no food or nothing, so. But the movie was still good, and then I rewatched it in a completely different theater with a bigger crowd, and they were loving it. I was loving it. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. 5 out of 5 stars. Number two. Number one goes to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Very gorgeous animation, very strong plot. Villain was pretty great. Miguel O'Hara is hot. I don't know what to tell you. Like, tens across the board, it was really well executed. I have not rewatched it. I've only watched it once, and I was meaning to rewatch it. I will probably rewatch it eventually, but I really enjoyed it. I think it was really well executed. The world building was perfect. Like, there was just a lot of like I did not have any complaints outside of the fact that there's like it's a part one of two. Like I'm ready for that part two to happen and come out already. Like the cliffhanger was kind of insane. But 5 out of 5 stars, number one film of the year, Spider Verse, and that's my top 10. So I will do another video talking about my top 10 worst movies of the year because I am a hater and I love talking about those. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast on ZCN Ticket's YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms so you can be notified as to when the worst of drops. And that is pretty much it. So this has been Cake Dive, signing off of Cake Radio, Cake Dive Podcast, and a ZCN Ticket Sounds podcast production. And yeah. Oh, and it smells like lunch is ready. So I gotta go. Bye, guys. That Zendaya stuff is hilarious. No, because that also that other clip when she's like, yeah. So I gotta go. So talk to you guys later. Don't forget to smile.